Good evening and welcome to Thursdays with NAMI. My name is Peg Morrison. I'll be your host tonight. I am the Assistant Director of NAMI North Carolina. That's the National Alliance on Mental Illness, North Carolina. I'm glad y'all are here. Thursdays with NAMI is our way of building conversations and building community around the topic of mental health. 'Tis the season to be jolly, whether you like it or not. For some folks, it's a special time of year. It's the best time of year. For others, it's a dark time. According to a study conducted by NAMI, our national office, nearly 2 out of 3 people with mental health conditions say their condition gets worse during the holidays. That's a lot of folks. Why would that be? Sometimes loneliness and self-doubt are amplified by endless scenes of holiday cheer. It's easy to feel left behind in a world that values wealth and abundance. Everything needs to be shiny and new all the time. If this describes you or someone you love, you are in the right place. You're not alone. We'll be discussing some helpful approaches in just a moment with Jason Phillips, a licensed clinical social worker, therapist, and life coach right here in Raleigh, North Carolina. As usual, the first part of our show will be an interview with our guest, and Jason is very, very hip, very good speaker. Partway through, we'll show a video of the week, and then we'll be taking questions and answers from you, members of our virtual studio audience and Facebook friends. Now, I want to do a quick word from our sponsors. Thursdays with NAMI is funded in part by the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Mental Health, Developmental Disabilities, and Substance Abuse Services through the Federal Community Mental Health Block Grant Fund. Guidance and their supports. And moving right along, Jason Phillips, he's an alumna of the University of Michigan. He's a therapist, life coach, and all-around dynamic individual. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, thank you, Peg. I'm super excited to be here. I always love our interactions and love the talks and just the audience too. So I'm excited.
All right. Wonderful. Well, let's jump right in. We always like to know the backstory of our guests. So tell us about yourself in a nutshell.
Oh, okay. So I'm from Detroit. I've been in Raleigh for close to 6 years. Time is really going by pretty fast, but I'm from Detroit, born and raised. As far as me, I grew up in a household raised primarily by my mother and grandmother with myself and my sister. I'm married. Excuse me, I have a pet dog, Snoop. It's a mini golden doodle. He's 5 years old. And I enjoy the work that I do as far as being a licensed therapist and life coach.
All right. That sounds like a good start to getting to know you. How would you describe your relationship with the winter holidays?
We have a love-hate relationship. And I say that because growing up, especially with the holidays, I used to always look forward to this time of the year. I look forward to my birthdays in 2 days, December 11th. Then 2 weeks later is Christmas and then New Year holidays. So before I used to really look forward to it. Now I still do, but I've had a couple of losses. I'll be honest. My mother died 2 years ago and my grandmother 4 years ago. So the holidays are just a little bit different now. And I'm learning, especially this year, that I'm getting more back into the spirit. I'm looking forward to putting my tree up. So my wife and I, she puts up the big 10, 12 foot tree and I have like the little 6 foot. Yeah, I know, right? So it's been like I'm getting back more into the holidays and I'm looking forward to that.
Wow, I'm so sorry for your loss. It sounds like those were like the central people in your life for decades.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They were. Thank you, Peg. Thank you.
Absolutely. So you've been practicing mental health for over 10 years. What have you seen in terms of the winter blues, also called seasonal affect disorder? And maybe you could tell us what seasonal affect disorder is.
Yeah, so what I've seen just personally and professionally is that when the climate changes and the sun starts to go down earlier, it does affect our mood. So seasonal affective disorder is a real mental health diagnosis. I know a lot of times people think, well, are the winter blues real and is that a thing? For some of us, depending on the intensity of the emotion and the feelings and how long it lasts, like the duration of the symptoms, is something that you should talk to a mental health professional about. And it's nothing that we should be ashamed of. So like right now, 5:30, but between 5:30 and 6 p.m., it can get really dark. So
yes, it can.
and that's disheartening for a lot of us. When I first moved into my home here, because I would get home around 6 and I would leave out around 6 a.m. I didn't see my neighborhood until really honestly like February, March.
Oh my gosh.
So it takes a toll on us. I just visited Houston a few weeks ago, and a friend of mine from Michigan went to travel back home. And he said, man, you know, I've been here for a week, but I'm ready to go because the gray skies and the lack of vitamin D and the sun, that takes a toll on us. We look forward to going outside, and even if it's not like 70 degrees, just the fact that it's sunny is something that gets us out of the out of our bed, looking forward to the day.
Yeah, and those short days and all the dark skies, it kind of makes me want to hibernate sometimes. It's just, I guess it's my body's reaction to nighttime so much of the time. So,
and you're right, Peg.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the validation. So as I mentioned in a NAMI survey, almost 2 out of 3 people, 64% of those with mental illness said they feel worse during the holidays. And NAMI chalked it up in the survey to expectations, loneliness, and stress. How can we support folks who are feeling bad, and how can we support ourselves if we're the ones feeling bad?
So there's a couple things. One, we can validate the feelings. So as we talked about with this, the sun not being out as much, it's tough because if you're battling or you're managing depression or anxiety, we know getting outside and having physical activity helps. But we may not be as motivated to do so when it's getting darker, when it's colder. So now we're indoors. And what do we do indoors? Typically, we're falling asleep or we're eating. And these things are counterproductive to helping our mental health and wellness. So one, if you are experiencing any of these symptoms, I want to just validate the feelings and not feel like you have to do something about it. But if you are wanting to do something, make that something be enjoyable. So for instance, if you want to talk about it, or if you want to do something that's fun indoors, so that could be painting, journaling, but now it gets us out of our head and just more into our creative spirit.
I love how you emphasize just making room for your feelings, acceptance. That's sort of like the very first step. It's almost a pre-step, but a lot of us miss it, right?
Yes.
So that resonates a lot.
Because we go to fix it mode so quick. And some things we don't need to fix, we just need to embrace. And that doesn't mean that we wallow in our sorrow or we can't get better or manage our moods, but it's like, hey, how are you feeling today, Peg? How am I feeling? And just checking in itself, it allows us to connect, and that connection helps us feel better.
Yeah, that is so true. And we don't get that without the feeling, without just sitting with that sometimes. Right. So we know also that trauma can color a person's experience of everyday events or maybe a whole season. Maybe I lost a loved one to suicide in December, and that comes up for me. Some people think of a parent who is in the hospital or maybe incarcerated during the holiday season. How can we cope with those triggers that come up at certain times of year?
Particularly, so you're right, trauma does impact how we experience the holidays. And depending on the trauma, whether that's the loss due to suicide, whether that's a breakup, a failed relationship, all of those things can make the holiday season very tough for us. So in addition to embracing and acknowledging the feelings, something else that we can do is just learning to be present for each other, hold space for each other. And if it is a loved one that's no longer with us, there's ways that we can incorporate that person into our holiday season. And I guess if we have time, I'll share a few things you can do. You can put up some ornaments that, pictures or ornaments of your loved one. You can have an empty chair at the table so that person feels like that they're still there, or you're holding the memory there for that person. You can light a candle in memory of your loved one. Or if you're going through, again, like a breakup, you can light a candle, solidifying the love that's lost. And these are some very low key things. Also, if you don't want to look at pictures or you don't want to look at video, giving yourself permission to not feel pressured to do that is helpful too.
That's a really good point. I love the idea of honoring the loved one, or maybe just honoring your own commitment to self-care in light of whatever you're facing, with a candle or with an empty chair or an ornament. But sometimes you just want to put it all out of your mind, and that's okay too.
Yeah, and you can do that too with starting a new tradition. So maybe you and your loved one used to always, have ham and turkey or ham and macaroni and cheese for Christmas. But you're saying, you know what, this year I want to do something different. Let's do a seafood dish, or let's go out to a restaurant. That's one thing. I used to work as a grief counselor for about 4 years early in my social work career. And I learned that when you change traditions or you allow new traditions to happen, that in itself just brings about a whole new experience, and we can feel better doing that too.
That makes a lot of sense to me. It's sort of the process of creating that and experiencing that and feeling your way through all those little decisions, planning a new meal. It just kind of changes your energy, and that can lift you up, or just put you in a different space where you're not focused on things that are hard, that are still tender and pushing your buttons.
Yeah. So like if you were to take me to a restaurant that I've never been to before, I'm not maybe thinking so much about my own feelings or experience. I'm thinking, oh, wow, Peg is so nice. She's taking me to this nice sushi place, and I'm going to come back here, and I ordered this. So my emotions are vastly different than if I were sitting at home just thinking solely about the people who I don't have with me.
Yeah. And, for some reason with myself, when I push myself to get out of a darker space, I don't think outside the box. It's like, okay, I should make a traditional dinner. I should put up the tree, but you can change it up, and that's perfectly fine. That's a great way to do the holiday too.
Because the newness of it, we're all into our senses and everything.
Yeah.
We're creating new memories.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a beautiful thing to do. I have to say, talking about changing up traditions, I keep thinking of a friend of mine who was divorced, and she was never able to get a cat because of her ex-husband's allergies. So now she has 6 cats, and now all her holiday meals are vegan. So sometimes you can meet a lot of different needs by changing your traditions.
Yeah, and you can learn what you don't like. Sometimes we do certain traditions because that person liked that.
Right.
Maybe you used to decorate the house indoors and outdoors because that's what mom liked, or that's what your partner liked. But now you're saying, hey, I don't really want to decorate a whole lot, and I'm good with just watching, the Grinch and drinking my eggnog. And that now you feel like, hey, I don't have to do what they wanted to do. I can do some of what I wanted to do.
You are speaking my language. Grinch and eggnog. That's all I need.
Yep.
That's perfect. So speaking of family, some folks are triggered by family. Maybe you don't see them very often. Communication might be codependent, difficult, sometimes even toxic. So, and I have a friend, he finds himself regressing when he's around his family of origin, like he slips into a role or a past self that he's expected to be. Any tips on navigating those dynamics?
Yeah, it's tough too, because family systems, they are strong. I mean, they've been going for a long time. So typically, if you're in your adulthood, then these things have been going on for decades. So, mom always does this, or dad does this, the siblings do this, and that's just how it is. So when you get older and you think, hey, this is not right, or I'm not showing up in my best self or as my best self, I want to change this. When you start to change it, people can push back. They're like, wait, you always do this. You always buy the gifts, or you always supply us with that. So now that you're setting a healthy boundary, we don't like that. So
Right.
expect that when you do change and you want to show up differently for your own mental health and wellness, that not everybody's going to be a super fan of that. And that's okay, because it's about you doing the best thing to protect your peace. So that's the first step I would say. Be aware that not everybody's going to like that. The second step will be a reminder, be very clear on what you want the boundaries to look like. So if you go to, like, if we always used to meet at a certain family member's house, but then the conversation starts to go left, it starts to be unproductive, or we could be gossiping about people, and you're thinking, I don't like the way that feels. I don't like the way this sounds. You can kind of plan ahead and say, hey, if we start to talk about family members who are not here, I'm going to excuse myself from the conversation. Right. Or if I don't want to talk about certain topics, maybe we don't want to get into politics. So let's put the list. We're not talking about this, that, and this. And we put that list where we can see it, we agree on it. And if people can't uphold those boundaries, don't feel guilty for having to leave or enforce them.
Right. Those boundaries are so important. Holidays are something we always end up talking about when I'm in a NAMI support group too. And we talk about, having an exit strategy. If you just start to feel claustrophobic or really need to change your space, just come up with a reason, or give yourself permission to leave abruptly, whatever it takes, or have a friend that you can call, something like that.
Yeah, Peg, you hit it on the head with the leave abruptly. Some of us don't, because I'm that person too, when it's time to leave, I can't give a long drawn out speech, because now I'm adding 30 minutes onto my exit strategy. And it's okay to say, hey guys, it's been great catching up. I'll see you next time. Or, hey guys, it's been great. Love you. I'll give you a call when I get home. You don't have to stay longer than what you want.
That's right. And brevity is the soul of wits. So that's something too.
Yeah, I like that.
All right. Another saying I've got queued up here. They say comparison is the thief of joy. Now, I may know rationally that focusing on what I don't have is not helpful. It doesn't make me feel good. But we live in a commercial society. Everyone's showing off this time of year their beautiful family, their beautiful vacation, their numerous gifts. It's all on social media. It can be hard to stop that comparison engine in the brain. How do we do that?
So it makes it even more tough now because of social media. And we have to remember that everything that we see on social media is not real.
That's so true.
I remember I was coming home from somewhere. I was on a flight, and it was like a 3-hour flight. It was pretty long. And during the flight, I could see the person kind of like in the aisle or whatever next to me across the aisle. And she was looking at a picture of herself. And throughout, like, for an hour or two of that flight, she was making small changes on the picture of herself. And I really felt bad, because a filter is one thing, but she was changing that picture for so long and she was so detailed about it. And in my mind, I'm thinking this must be, so whoever she shares it with, they have a different perception of what's her reality. But when you talk about comparison, we have to be careful not to try to paint a different perception of who we are, because we're worried about what somebody else is doing or what they look like, because we could be comparing ourselves to their fake reality. Does that make sense? So now we're putting ourselves in a bind or a different headspace to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak, when in reality, that's what you're seeing from them is not even authentic.
Right. Yeah. So I don't want to compare my insides to everyone else's outsides.
No, even like, I'll be completely transparent. Before we jumped onto our webinar this evening, I thought, okay, do I want to use a virtual background, which I rarely use? And I thought, No, that's not really, that's not me. So
Mhm.
just be yourself. Um, be real. People can connect to that, and we can respect that at the end of the day too. But you're right. Comparison is the thief of joy because we're comparing ourselves to somebody else when we can own and be comfortable with who we are.
Absolutely. And I like your point about being authentic, that
Mhm.
that's how you establish a real connection. That's how other people can feel more safe with you and share on a deeper level, or, whatever that thing is that we're all looking for, that human
Yeah.
connection. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so the next question is a little bit about diversity. Holidays are harder on some whole communities than others. According to the Center for Racial Justice in Education, non-dominant cultures and religions, so I'm thinking this would be white folks and Christians would be the dominant ones in our country. So the non-dominant religions and cultures are often racialized and seen as other in the United States, and that's never a good feeling, especially this time of year. So how can we take care of ourselves if we're being othered, and how can we be more inclusive and welcoming if we're not?
Mm. So two things I would want to highlight. One, if you have certain holidays or celebrations in your community or in your culture, don't downplay those traditions. Don't downplay uh, those celebrations. Sometimes we may feel like, well, there's Christmas, there's New Year's, but maybe you celebrate Kwanzaa or maybe you celebrate Hanukkah, but you don't want to say that because it's not necessarily mainstream or it's not popular in your area. So now what you're doing is you're diminishing your person, your values, because you don't want to ruffle any feathers. So again, it
Mhm.
goes back to being able to embrace who you are and own that. The second key piece I would say is that be careful not to compare what you or your community has either. So when it comes to the holidays, particularly Christmas, we think about gifts. We think about the big fancy tree, all the
Mhm.
gifts around the tree, which at the end of the day, that costs a lot of money. So for families who don't have the same resources, we can still be resourceful. So we don't think, oh, I can't get my daughter, the expensive Barbie dolls that she wants, or I can't buy my son the expensive new clothes or the iPhone, whatever. What can you do to really honor the relationship between you and your loved one that's separate just from the monetary value? We put a lot of emphasis on that. And when we don't have it, we feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not a good person. I'm not a good parent. I'm not a good partner. But if that's the only thing that you value or the relationship is valued, I would want to reassess the relationship.
That is a really good summary. I like that bottom line statement because that's so true. If
Yeah, we got to embrace who you are and don't just think if it's not about a monetary gift, then you can't do something.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's always interesting. You don't realize who feels othered in any given situation. I was having a conversation with friends about meditation and, what do we do to calm ourselves? Maybe it's walking. For some people, it's prayer. And I was trying to get my friend Dave to share, what was his thing, and he was kind of defensive, like, no, I don't have a thing. And as we talked, it evolved that he thought I was asking him, what is your faith? What God do you worship? And he's an atheist. So he fully expected us to reject him.
Right,
Um, I guess because I like to talk about meditation, and one of the other gentlemen there was the son of a preacher, but we were all like, that's cool. Your
right.
beliefs are your beliefs, and we're all friends, and that's completely fine. But it threw me for a loop. I just had no idea that's where he was coming from, or that he would be so sensitive about it.
Yeah, isn't it ironic how we can really be defensive or think we're going to be judged when that wasn't even where you were coming from?
Right. It really wasn't.
But he felt
Yeah.
like it sounds like he felt like, hey, don't attack me. I'm good over here. When really
Right.
you were trying to make a bid for connection to figure out, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? Because maybe you can steal some of what he's doing, or he can steal some of what you're doing.
Exactly. I was looking for common ground, and it didn't have to be a God-related common ground at all.
Mhm.
So, yeah. So I see we've got some really nice comments from Diane in the chat box. Jason, your words are so inspiring. Love your words on comparison and keeping it real. Very nice. We always have such a nice chat box on the show.
Yeah, I love it.
All right. So you grew up in the Detroit area, definitely colder, different scene, but you've been in Raleigh for a time. Did you notice any differences in the holidays between the two areas?
So outside of the weather, I would say, I experienced them so much differently. So because I'm from Detroit, all my friends and family are in Detroit. So it was different because I didn't have the same like friends and people to visit. So the holiday experience for me here has been vastly different from when I was in Michigan, because I would go to different houses and visit family. I would take over or leftover plates. You go to one person's house and you take the food home. So that's been different. And also some of the spirit. I think the holiday spirit, I'm getting used to, or at least my wife and I are getting used to what the spirit looks like here. I know that there's light shows and things like that. So we just have to be more open to embracing ourselves to the holiday spirit now.
That makes a lot of sense to me. It sounds like the family and friend connections offset that cold winter a little bit.
Yeah, they did. It really did. Now we're meeting new people and we're starting to build our own community and family here. So I would say that if anything, the holidays are looking more like the holidays for us in a positive way.
Yeah, it definitely takes time to put down those roots, huh?
I see. It really does.
Yeah. So last question for this portion of the show, what gives you hope?
Conversations like this, knowing people like yourself, like Nami, who really want to pour back into people. The work that I do, it can be stressful at times, but when I hear the positives and the transformation and the changes, that really pumps me up. It keeps me enthused to go out and do the work again. Because as you know, our work can be tough. We hear a lot, we see a lot. So I find hope by the stories of people who are managing their mental health and wellness in a very healthy and positive way.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful to hear it. They say you can't pour from an empty cup, so it is really important that we take care of ourselves.
It is. It's so important. And again, these conversations, it keeps me energized and I enjoy it.
Well, I appreciate your time very much here. We all do. So folks, we're going to wrap up the interview portion of the show. And before we move to our video of the week, I want to give a big shout out to the folks working behind the scenes. Tonight, that's one person in particular, Diane Crisanda. She's the vice president of our board at NAMI North Carolina. She's also president of NAMI South Mountains, which covers Rutherford, Gaston, bunch of counties out that way. Thank you, Diane Crisanda, for being here on our chat box. And of course, thanks again to Jason for spending your evening with us. So, yeah, we've got a fun video of the week. I just like this sort of a potpourri of different winter holidays that are celebrated around the world. Let's check this out.
From Christmas to Yuletide to Hanukkah, midwinter festivals and holidays are celebrated around the world from different religions, cultures, and customs. Let's celebrate 12 of those events from around the globe. Number 1. On Christmas Eve in Finland, families place a single lit candle in the snow next to the graves of their loved ones. The candles are a symbol of resurrection and a reminder that ancestors will live again. Number 2. As the birthplace of both Jesus and St. Nicholas, the Middle East is home to some spectacular Christmas celebrations. From Christmas lights on the streets of Cairo to a giant Christmas tree in the main square of Beirut, Christmas here is one of the most celebrated events of the year. Number 3. Every year, a winter solstice celebration called the Janji Festival is celebrated in Taiwan on December 21st or 22nd. Janji means the arrival of winter. Number 4. Hanukkah in Israel is observed for 8 nights and days, with lighting the candles of a candelabra with 9 branches, called a menorah. Number 5. The Christkin, or Christkinel, is a traditional giver of gifts at Christmas time in several European countries. The word Christkin translates to Christ child, but is depicted as an angelic figure with blonde hair and wings. Number 6. In Italian folklore, Befana is an old woman who delivers gifts to children throughout Italy on Epiphany Eve, the night of January 5th, in a similar way to St. Nicholas or Santa Claus. Number 7. Icelandic children get to enjoy the favor on not one, but 13 Father Christmases, called the Yule Lads. These merry but mischievous fellows take turns of visiting kids on the 13 nights leading up to Christmas. Number 8. Saturnalia is an ancient Roman festival in honor of the god Saturn, held on the 17th December of the Julian calendar, and later expanded with festivities through the 23rd of December. Number 9. Hogmanay is the Scots word for the last day of the year, and is synonymous with the celebration of the new year in the Scottish manner. Number 10. Jonkanu is a street parade with music, dance, and costumes of Akan origin in many islands across the English-speaking Caribbean every 26th of December and New Year's Day. Number 11. Yule, or Yuletide, is a festival historically observed by ancient Germanic people. Scholars have connected the original celebration of Yule to the wild hunt and the god Odin. Number 12. Last, we have Kwanzaa, which is a week-long celebration held in the U.S. and other nations of the African diaspora in the Americas to honor African American heritage and culture. It is observed from December 26th through January 1st, culminating in gift-giving and a feast. This colorful time of the year is marked by a plethora of beautiful costumes and celebrations rich with traditions, not including the 12 we just touched. What better way to celebrate these holidays by coming together to learn more about how others celebrate around the world? Thank you for taking the time to watch. May you and yours have a happy holidays and a joyous new year from all of us here at Working Solutions.
All righty.
That was awesome.
It was unique, wasn't it? I don't know much about Working Solutions, but I thought, well, that's really different. I'm gonna pull that video in. Why not? So, all right. So now, folks, it's time to take your questions, folks in the virtual studio audience and on Facebook Live. We don't have any yet, so I'm going to go ahead. Thank you for the kind words in the chat box. Make some announcements. Next week is our last Thursdays with NAMI of 2021. Really unusual topic. What is psychopathy? There's an organization called Psychopathy Is, dedicated to educating folks and making space for folks who live with the disorder, which affects 1% of the population. It's characterized by reduced empathy and remorse, bold and daring personality, and difficulty controlling behavior. It has to do with brain issues, and a neuroscientist and psychologist from Georgetown will be joining us, Dr. Abigail Marsh, and a family member of folks with psychopathy, Lisa Michael. Don't want to miss that conversation. It promises to be very interesting. Also, please fill out our survey when you leave this Zoom. You'll get magically drawn to a SurveyMonkey page, and we'd love to have your feedback. It helps us improve over time, and it helps us keep our grant funds going. So we appreciate your support in that way so much. All right.
Hey, Peck, while we wait on questions, I wanted to revisit one of the questions you asked me about the difference in holidays being in Detroit and Raleigh.
Yeah.
So one big difference is snow, and that
Ah,
and that makes it very, I like the snow at least on the Christmas or certain days.
that is so true. As you were answering, I was thinking, it's just hard. It's hard for me to warm up, to pick a phrase, to Christmas when there's no cold weather, no snow.
Yeah.
Some of my neighbors have palm trees and whatnot. But we do
Hmm.
have some questions coming in. So yeah, it's a mental shift, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. So can you speak more? This is from John. Can you speak more about loneliness during the holidays?
Yeah, for sure. Good question. So when the holidays can be a very lonely time for some of us, because even if you have family, you have friends, but maybe you just don't feel like you're in the spirit to be around them. And so what do you do during those times? One thing I always recommend is journaling. So that way you get a chance to put those thoughts and feelings out on paper. And it's not something that you have to share with somebody else. So you may have a partner, you may have good friends, or even your therapist, but you don't want to disclose what you're feeling. But journaling is so helpful because it allows you to put those feelings out there, and you can track also how you feel. So if you journal this year, maybe you journal again next year and you think, oh, wow, last year I really had a tough time. And this
Yeah,
year it's not as bad.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah, good question, John. Thank you for that. Do you have any thoughts about handwriting your journal versus using a computer? I've been struggling with possibly making the switch away from handwriting a journal.
I think there's research, and I can't quote the study, but I believe there's research that shows when you handwrite your emotions and definitely your goals, you're just that much more apt to reach them, and it feels
Wow.
better. Yeah, so I'll get back with you, but I'm a personal believer. I still handwrite.
Mhm.
It's something therapeutic about the pen and the paper or the notepad, as opposed to now I can write. Of course, I can type faster than I can write. It's much more legible when when I type it. But at the end of the day, I still encourage people to go old school with the pen and paper.
Mhm.
Mhm.
That's interesting about the goals. It makes sense because even though it's not a huge physical effort, you're still putting your body into that process.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Separately,
right.
I'll say this too, Peck. Think about like a love note. If your
Mhm.
partner handwrites a love note or types a love note and uses fancy font, I think you may prefer or value the handwritten note a little bit more.
That is an excellent way of putting it.
Mhm. Yeah.
That is. All right. More questions popping up in the Q&A. Do you come from a large family?
Not that I'm super close with. So there's myself. I have an older sibling, an older sister, older brother, and a younger sister. But growing up, it was typically kind of small. I mean, we would have for holidays, we would have a lot of family friends over. So there
Mm,
would be like my mom, my sister, grandparents, or maybe aunt, uncle. But there wasn't like 20 people. If there were 20, 10 of those people were not blood related, but they were family.
huh. Well, that sounds like a nice extended family.
Mm-hmm.
Nice way of approaching family. Um, what is your favorite time of year and why? From Diane.
Um, it's the summer.
Yeah. Even here?
Well, even North Carolina surprised me. I did not know it was going to be this warm in the summer. So I go
Yeah.
to Florida and cool off a bit. But seriously, but yeah, summer's still my favorite time.
Yeah. Since I've moved from Ohio to here, I think spring, fall are my favorites, almost equally, because fall is so beautiful with the leaves, and spring is like everything is coming back to life and everything is so lush and green.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I love being outside in North Carolina.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, same here.
Um, Lots of questions from Diane, our chat box extraordinaire. Um, Please tell us when you knew you wanted to become a therapist and why. Interesting.
Yeah, so in high school, we had, I went to a college prep school, Cass Tech in Detroit, and everybody had different curriculums. And whether it be engineering, science, I chose business because they didn't have psychology. But I knew when I heard about people who would either speak about personal development or mental health, or people who help people with their problems, that was it for me. So I'm like, and I also always wonder how come certain people manage the same issue differently. So that's what intrigued me to want to become a psychology major and then ultimately become a therapist.
Interesting, though, that you now more or less run your own business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
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 So that business probably came in handy a little bit.
Oh, right. Yeah, it did. I know, right? Yeah, I didn't think about it like that. Yeah.
That's neat. It's funny how things work out.
Mm-hmm.
Are you planning on writing a book?
Yes, I don't have a date yet, but I do. That's a great question, because I want to put out my experiences personally and professionally to help other people.
So would it be an autobiography or more like a sort of philosophy on life?
No, well, that's another good question. It would be more so around how to cope after loss.
Oh,
Yeah.
so more on recent happenings and your journey. Sure. Well, I'll put me on your list when you make that announcement.
I will. Thanks, Peg. I for sure will.
I see in your background all of your books, which, oh, I see in the room behind you, which is your favorite book and why?
Ooh. Probably the one that stands out the most is probably the one you can kind of see, which is Malcolm X.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was really intense to hear a story, the way it was told, and the way he just really taught himself between his religion, his work ethic. I felt like I knew him at the end of reading the book. So it was even though it was educational, but also inspirational too.
Yeah. I read that a long time ago. What came to mind for me was comments about being hungry, but I'm not sure. I might be confusing that with a Richard Wright book. But just growing up with hunger and always being hungry as a child. And I just thought, gosh, that would be rough. Can you recommend any books that folks can read this time of year to help others?
I would say right now, because this time of the year can be pretty somber for us, could be kind of lonely. I wouldn't read anything heavy. I would read something that you can, what do they call, like a turn, like a page turner, something that's catching your attention, something that keeps you. And like a lot of these books behind me are really like self-help or psychology based. I wouldn't recommend those right now. I would recommend The Four Agreements. I don't know if it's behind me or not, but that's one I would recommend because it is self-help, but it's also such a short and powerful read. I think people will really find value with The Four Agreements.
The Four Agreements. All right. Something to check out for sure.
Yes, that is a powerful book by Don Miguel Ruiz.
Okay. The Four Agreements. Thank you. What age group do you treat, and do you do sessions virtually?
I do virtual sessions, and I typically work with 18 and up. I mean, sometimes I have somebody who's a little younger, but my primary age group that I work with would be between, I would say 28 to 40. Those are the people who usually make the call and schedule with me.
Yeah. All righty. And final question in the Q&A for now. You kind of covered this earlier. What are your plans for the holidays?
So I need to do, well, I'm saying I need to, but I would like to go check out some of the lights in Raleigh. Really, really kind of embrace into get into the holiday spirit a bit more. I'm looking forward to it because, believe it or not, the time is like, it's flying by. So I don't want this year, even though it's okay if it flies, I don't want it to just zoom by and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just missed Christmas. I don't want that to happen.
No,
But I'm
I was
staying local.
driving. Oh, go ahead.
No, I just say I'm staying local though.
Sure. I was driving down Western Avenue and I passed the Fox studio, and their radio tower is glorious. It looks like an enormous tall Christmas tree. I was so impressed. Yeah, that was pretty neat.
Mhm.
I don't watch the channel, but I do really appreciate that Christmas decoration. So
Yeah, same.
more power to them. Any other questions? Go ahead and write them in the Q&A. I'll check Facebook Live real quick to see if we've got anything to address there. I really appreciate folks spending your evening with us. Do you have any closing thoughts, Jason, that are coming to mind before we wrap up?
We're just to reiterate what we talked about. The holidays, for some, it's the best time of the year. But when I think about when the holidays were just really super fun, I was like between that 8 and 12 years old, you know?
Yes.
There was no pressure. My biggest worry was, would I get enough gifts?
Exactly.
And now we are in a position where we are the gift givers. So just take some of the pressure off yourself. I saw the same study that NAMI produced, which was excellent, how they really asked the questions. And so many people felt like their loved one is no longer here. There's too many expectations to be met. So it means that's a lot of stress. So do something fun for yourself. A couple of years ago, before COVID, me and my wife, we went to Miami for December.
Ooh, nice.
It was different. And, it was just a good time to get away, because then the pandemic hit. We were shut in for so long. So you just never know what's going to happen. So I would say embrace the holidays in whatever way you can.
Well, I think that's a perfect note to end on. Again, Jason Phillips, thank you so much for spending your time and sharing your expertise with us. It's always a pleasure.
Well, thank you, Peg. Thank everybody else. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Diane.
Yeah, so enjoy your week ahead. I hope to see you next Thursday night, everyone. And remember, you're never alone. We're here for you.
Right.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.